So today with me is my friend Layth. He also runs a business within the UAE. It is a mobile app and web development business. And it's kind of crazy that in college I met a lot of people when we were very young in our early 20s, and I'm so shocked to see so many of the people that I went to college with become operating their own businesses and doing their own thing only 5-10 years later and running fairly successful businesses in the Middle East. So yeah, Layth, what was I don't exactly recall how we met in college, or do you remember at all like how our
I
general
think I do. Yeah. I think I do. I think at that time I was a bit obsessed with working out, and you're like, "Hey, Layth, are you still like, are you sure that everything is natural?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, of course." And you keep doubting that. I think that was like the funniest encounter.
You were huge. You were like, let me add some context. Like, the camera isn't doing you justice. You're like 6'2". You
No,
have
man, just 6 foot. That's
no,
it.
no. I don't know. You were huge, and you were into that fitness lifestyle. You were like, I'm pretty sure in class there you were sneaking in protein bars and just you were
I
getting
was.
you were getting smarter and jacked simultaneously. And whenever you see someone that's very domineering, etc., you just want to go up to them and say hello and hi. And it turns out you were just a very you weren't well. You have something called like a gladiator face. So like when you're sitting and you're just there, you look very a testosterone fueled, very aggressive
I'm
guy.
just a normal person, man.
But you're actually very relaxed and quite intelligent, which I guess there's a stereotype that people at workout aren't very smart. But you were always very top of the class. You were always on top of all the
I
assignments.
made sure that I break that code.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're incredibly disciplined when it came to academics. And then it was crazy. We stayed in touch after college. You worked for one of the major payment processors in the country called Checkout, and you actually worked with them for 10 years. What was it like spending 10 years in corporate in the UAE?
I would say it was very exciting. So just to give you a little bit of a background, so I was more of a tech person, and I was trying to basically move away. So of course, whenever we study, basically like during the university time, we probably like try to do a part-time job or something like that. So I was actually doing a full-time job back then, but it was more position for sales. And I found myself like, not really fitting in terms of sales, or maybe that sort of activity. I think it was like employee training or basically in-house training. And I wanted to move away from that and go to tech, more into tech. So once I started going into that, I started to like this even more. So basically I started with tech support, and then I ended up liking that. And at the same time, I had that kind of like customer sense, like I know how to be in the shoes of the customer. So the companies that I worked for kind of like that, and that's how I like climbed the corporate ladder. So I would say, to answer your question, I would say I learned a lot. I would say it was pretty diverse. Like I learned about how to exactly speak with enterprise clients, how different it is than speaking with just when you work in B2C, it's really different. And of course, if you change roles, you tend to, of course, learn a lot about multiple functions. So yes, it was definitely very exciting.
As someone that also worked and studied full time during college, I think one of the core advantages of our university was that they had very flexible class timings, and that you could kind of, bulk up classes into singular 1 to 2 days. I also saw many students that would put mattresses in the back of their back seat. So when they were there for their like 9 a.m. classes, they drive up super early, get a couple hours of sleep in the parking lot,
Crazy.
go do their classes, and then do a night shift somewhere. And it was quite brutal, but so worth it. Do you think that it's important for people in college now to consider working and studying full time? Is that something you'd recommend?
Very good question. I would say it really depends on what sort of thing that you're studying. For example, if it's something that takes a lot of your mental energy, like we're talking about engineering or medical field, of course it's going to be very, very tough, right? But I find it extremely beneficial if you are in the business school, like basically studying business administration, and at the same time you're actually working. You will kind of like start applying what you learn on your daily job. Like for example, I remember that attending the project management classes was extremely beneficial for me. I understood what is the critical path and how does it mean, what is the project scope. I kept on hearing this word in my workplace and I didn't know what that means. So when I studied it at the same time, it was very beneficial for me and I was able to relate. So to answer your question, yes, I would definitely recommend it if you're in the business field. But if you're in something that is like more into engineering or medical, probably it wouldn't be so balanced.
I agree with that. I think business students specifically, what better education would there be to while learning the material, but also functionally working at a business and adopting more responsibilities to kind of apply what you learned as well.
Exactly. But guess what? Between classes, I wasn't really taking a nap, unfortunately. I was doing something else. Can you guess? Like,
I don't.
knowing what you know about me, my stereotype, like, can you guess what I was doing between classes when I have a 2 hour gap?
You were probably working out.
That's right.
You were probably working out. I don't understand how you were working out because our university didn't have an active gym, but maybe you got a gym membership somewhere close by.
That's right. Yes, I used to drive to the gym to fitness first, and that was my system basically. Work out for an hour, go to Subway, get a foot long, demolish it, go back to the class.
It was quite. I think that I've also seen this obsessive nature with other business owners that I've seen in UAE as well, is that there is this combination of being very fitness obsessed and also being business owners. Do you think that there's a crossover for you specifically, that it was easier to, transition to a disciplined business life?
I would say yes. And it's kind of like discipline is required both in fitness and in business. So for example, it's easy to just slack and just say, I don't feel like working out today and something like that. Same thing for the business. Oh, I don't feel like, for example, working on my outreach today, or I don't feel like improving my business functions. So like discipline is required in both. So I would say they share the same kind of mentality.
Yeah, I think that I think there's so many times where you just don't feel like doing something. Like I remember yesterday, I had blocked my calendar for 6 hours and it was one task: improve email templates. And it sounds so stupid and it feels like such a waste of time at the moment, but those things tend to really improve your efficiency because it's something you do over and over and over and over. So the better the templates, the better you'll communicate and the better you'll get at closing deals or reaching agreements with clients. And I guess that some of that experience we learned while working and studying, working at various other businesses. So, and it's a big, I would say learning to build a business in the Middle East it's a very specific set of skills. And when you decided, okay, I'm going to be leaving checkout, I'm going to be starting my own business, what is the mentality that you need to start a business in your field, in the very, very incredibly competitive, more competitive than mine, tech field in the Middle East? What is the strategy? What are the thoughts you think of? How do you enter that space?
Great question, because yes, if I talk about like mobile app development or website development, that, by the way, that's the most basic way to describe my business. I can basically like get to that in a bit. But basically, you have to choose a niche. You have to basically specialize in something. Now, being like in the payment industry for about a decade, that's more than enough to basically choose a specific niche. And also, my obsession with technology also helped me to actually choose that field. So, the best way to answer this, I would say, being specialized in a specific field or subfield in this case will basically give you some sort of an edge. Like for example, if we talk about technology, what is one of the most critical pieces? It would be payments, how your customers are paying you. And I learned something that I find extremely useful. If let's say you have 100,000 customers, and just 1% of them is unable to pay because of some problematic payment experience. Some businesses might overlook this and they might think that it's not really a big deal, but for enterprises, that's a huge deal. So whenever a client signs with me a contract, I basically tend to add a lot of value. Like, okay, guys, I've built the app or the website or the platform that you guys asked for, but I can also now add a lot of value when it comes to payment optimization. So if your approval rate is at 90%, why not bring it up to 91? So choosing a niche was very, very helpful.
And that 1% you may not think's a lot, but like you said, for enterprise businesses that move into hundreds of millions, probably closer to a billion, that 1% would probably be close to like $100 million of lost revenue because you can't optimize certain payment pathways or gateways. And you're saying that you help optimize that specifically, making sure that, well, okay, the mobile app and the web development's done, but this is how you truly transition into smooth payments. How would you go about that? Like, what is the general thinking when an enterprise client comes to you for the solution? What are the kind of suggestions, or what do you think are the critical flaws that you think that most
I would
enterprise clients
say,
has?
yeah. So for example, if you come to me and say, Layth, hey, I want a website or a mobile app, I have two set of questions. Maybe I'll ask you, how do you want the mobile app to look like? But there is another set of questions which maybe some businesses will not like, but I think it would make sense to ask these questions, which is why exactly you need the app to be a certain way. Why do you need it to be, let's say, a progressive web app instead of a native app? Like, what's the reason about this? You might tell me something like, you know what, for my type of business, my customers tend to not, be so happy about downloading a native app. I'll be like, okay, that makes sense. But if it didn't make sense, I tend to basically share my experience with you and basically point you to the right direction. Even if it means reduction in scope, because I care about addressing the business requirements, not exactly increasing the tech scope.
Do you think that this is kind of like an engineer versus architect debate where it's the company has a very clear branding perspective or positioning in how they want to look, and that's conflicting with the back end architecture? Is that what you're generally fighting or trying to bridge the gap between, or is it purely that the enterprise business is stuck in its ways and it's not looking to move or transition towards another method?
Makes sense. But of course, there has to be balance in that. Of course, I will not fight the branding. I will not fight anything that is, I would say, mandatory requirement. If, for example, you need your app to be purple, that's of course, it's up to you. If you want the checkout experience to be 5 steps instead of one, because let's say you would like to capture requirements separately and you want to basically run some sort of a business logic after each step, then of course I will not fight that. There will always has to be like a balance that both parties would agree to.
And one of your major advantages is that payment processors tend to be a high risk business. Transitions of or movement of cash between multiple jurisdictions through multiple countries. There's a lot of money being stuck in between. So, do you use your in-depth knowledge of working at a payment processor to help navigate any triggers or any kind of stoppage of flows of management of funds being moved throughout the country? Is that your major value add? Is not only I'm going to make the app and make sure it works properly, but make sure that money is never stuck in one place?
Right. So when we talk about payments, we are talking about a huge topic. So remember when we said that, I work in a very like highly competitive field. Now, of course, and I said there is a niche for everything. There is a niche for tech. There is also a niche for payments, right? When we talk about fintech or financial technology, we are referring to so many different things. We're referring to blockchain. We're referring to online payments, to wallets, crypto wallets, like completely different things. Now, what I am specialized in is not exactly what you mentioned. What I'm specialized in is basically creating a payment integration, a complete payment system that is optimized for increasing the approval rate. So anything related, let's say, to, for example, regulatory compliance, I have a good knowledge about that, but it's not something that I'm specialized in, I would say. So, for example, if you tell me, I want you to create a full payment system that has fallback mechanisms, that is optimized for the best approval rate, that is optimized for that specific market, especially the GCC market, I would be probably one of the best people to choose. Like, I'm not going to say the best, but I think I'm pretty confident with that. But when it comes to, for example, regulatory compliance or basically moving money, that is something that is, I would say, outside my domain.
And now that you've been on this entrepreneurial journey and kind of looking to expand your own business in the Middle East and you're finding some success with it, I find that whenever I ask a business owner, okay, how do you build a business in the Middle East? I get wildly different answers. What is your opinion on how do you build a business in the UAE or in the GCC? How do you go about that venture?
Right. So I would say understanding the market is the first step. If, for example, if I'm well established in Europe and I try to expand in the Middle East, whatever I have learned, whatever knowledge that I have in Europe, a lot of it would apply, but not necessarily all of it. So I'll need to, of course, learn about the market from the industry experts. So I would say start with networking. If you are in the payments industry, start with networking with people who are in the payments industry, understand the local market needs and how things work. I would say avoiding assumptions, avoiding that whatever you have learned, whatever experience you have acquired in other regions would apply necessarily here. You have to validate that. I would say that's the key to basically expanding to the market.
Okay, so it's just being very specific, making sure that you use local knowledge to your advantage. There is some crossover in experience, but not all of it would transition. And how do you feel about being innovative? Do you think that you kind of have to take a chance on something new, or do you think that you should deal with what's been done and kind of ride that and make incremental improvements on what you did? There's a combination of both I see in the market, but what do you think is more effective? Just swinging for the fences, trying something no one else is trying, or doing what everyone else is doing, but just a bit better? What do you think is the safer or better way that will lead to success?
I would summarize it. I would summarize it to be to basically taking, maybe I can call it a scientific approach. You have to basically understand where exactly you're adding a significant value. You remember the 1% example that I have given you?
That's correct.
So,
Yeah.
so maybe that is like one example of how I can add a significant value. But for example, if like I'm trying to open a new business that is about, I don't know, providing consultation for fintech firms about like expanding the market from the legal perspective, I wouldn't be able to add a lot of value because this is not my specialty, right? So I would say understanding where exactly you're adding significant value and actually asking people, validating that would be actually the key to differentiate yourself. So basically what I'm trying to say here is find out, no matter, even if it's something that already exists in the market, if you do it very, very well, you know exactly what you're doing, you are adding significant value, and there is actually opportunity in the market. It doesn't matter if somebody else is doing it. If you think that you should do something better, then of course you have to do some tweaks.
I think that that's correct. So traditionally in the Middle East, you had from the start massive corporations or enterprises leading the way. In most other countries that I've traveled to and explored, there's a very large and bustling small business market, and I feel like in the Middle East, or at least in the UAE, it's almost like we're going backwards, and now we're seeing small businesses crop up from maybe employees or staff of the previous corporate entities, and now building that new crop of small business owners. And I feel like they're sort of becoming the new middle class. The new middle class in the UAE isn't going to be a highly paid professional, but this guy that owns this small business with X number of clients, and he's the one that's kind of, getting the best of both worlds for his time value for money. Is that what? So I guess my next question would be, is that what made you finally leave Checkout and pursue becoming an entrepreneur? And I'm seeing so many people do it. It's really, and most of them, I would say the success rate isn't the usual like 10 to 20. It's like 50% of them are successful. So why do you think there's this growing success rate of small businesses? And why did you also decide to leave Checkout at the end of the day?
I would say there is a cap in every corporate. There is a specific cap that you cannot really surpass. So, for example, if you are working as an employee, you have a specific role, specific responsibilities that you got to stick to. Anything extra you do is like, you'll get probably a smile, some compliment, and it can be recognized sometimes. But the company has hired you to do specific functions, and they have given you a job description that most probably you have to stick to, and of course KPIs. So if you want to unleash your creativity, this will not be the right place for you. However, I would say to basically have some sort of like a successful business, I wouldn't advise like anybody who is in, like, let's say in a corporate role to just go ahead and risk it all. Sometimes, yes, it works. Sometimes it doesn't. I have to say that you need to have some sort of a margin to do some trial and error. And honestly, trial and error is the best way to learn. It's fine. Launch 5 businesses and let them fail, and then keep doing that again. Every time you fail, you understood that you have taken one step from the ladder upward, right? So you tried, for example, to open this type of business, you failed, you learned what exactly is wrong, and you proceed to the next, right? So to summarize it, I would say having more room for creativity is the number one reason. And second is I prefer to have, I would say, yeah, it's the same thing, basically like the biggest room possible for creativity. Like, for example, today I say, hey, I want to do mobile apps development. And then tomorrow I want to have the ability to say, you know what, I want to work in, let's say, the AI field. So full flexibility, full movement. There is a lot of, I would say, motivation behind that.
I see. And when you started your own business, was it like, okay, I'm going to quit and then start my business? Or was there a transitionary period for you where you said, okay, I'm going to slowly wean towards my own company until it's ready to go and then I'll leave? Or did you just leave your previous firm and start your business?
It was, I would say, I started right after leaving. There was like maybe a planning phase. I was like kind of planning it, networking with people understanding whether if there is actually a real opportunity in the market. So I would say research and planning was before I basically leave my last job, and then I started right after.
I see. And then once you were done, there was no I need a break period. You just straight up ran out the gates.
No break whatsoever.
Did you have an aha moment? Like for me, my aha moment was meeting a potential client in the Dubai Mall. He handed me like just in cash because I didn't have a bank yet, just a license. Just he paid me out in cash, put in my backpack, sent him an email saying funds received will begin to like that. For me was my aha moment, saying with such little branding and resources, clients are coming to me for a specific service, and I think I can make this much bigger once I figured out the details.
You
and
add value, they'll come to you.
Exactly. What do you think was your aha moment? Like, okay, I'm ready to go. I should totally go all in and starting my own business. I think that there needs to be a trigger point. What was your trigger point for starting?
I would say like whenever I transitioned to a leadership role in my last job, I would say this was my aha moment. Like, okay, I think I've got the skills to actually lead people, to lead a team. And I would say that's a key skill to have to basically establish your own business. And then when also like the other moment that I had is of course when you are a team lead, you're also given major projects as well to work on. So when I saw that I was able to deliver or help the delivery of one of the biggest projects, I think it's about basically the expansion of a specific product of checkout.com to the Middle East. It's I believe related to improving the checkout experience. I was basically the main person managing that from the MENA region. And I was able to basically facilitate the success of that in a major way. So I was like, that was one of the biggest aha moments, I would say. I was like, okay, I got the leadership skills, I got the people skills, got the technical skills. You know what? I can build something on my own.
And you mentioned also like AI being so prevalent in the past 3 to 4 years. How are you seeing this impact your industry? The tech's been completely shaken up. All the funding for Silicon Valley has just been funneled straight into AI. How do you feel about that movement? How is that being implemented into your own workflow? How do you use AI into your own business? Given its kind of home field advantage for you, I guess businesses like mine or other businesses don't know exactly what to do with it yet, but what are the kind of tech experts doing with it currently? What would you be using AI for?
Great question. Now, I would say the best way to simplify that is to look at the types of requests that, how can I say, that you receive from clients 10 years ago, right? I'm talking about 10 years because AI started, I don't know, like 5-6 years ago. So if I talk about 10 years ago, you might find requests like, hey, I want to create a website or I want to create a mobile app. And 3 years ago, it was like, I need to create a website with AI or an app with AI or something like that. And maybe like some basic AI, like generative AI features. Right now, it's much more complicated. Right now, like you have to have the capabilities to create, I would say, maybe I can call it AI platform. So people don't want a website anymore, probably, like some of them. They probably now are targeting creating AI agents, right? Or sometimes like sub agents, and AI is developing every day. So when it comes to using it in my business, of course, that helps to speed up the development, speed up the debugging process to make sure that you basically deliver more in shorter amount of time. But of course, you have to use AI to deliver higher quality, not to deliver like more stuff with less quality over a shorter period of time. So basically, that's how it should be used. And it's good that you asked this question because one very important service that we provide is basically internal AI platform building. Let's say that you are a large enterprise, and let's say that you have three activities or let's say tasks which are very manual, and you're very sure that AI can do it, but you don't want to leak this data to like to external AI tools, and you want to basically have things integrated. So we used AI to our advantage by actually offering to create such internal platforms where you have like the LLM hosted internally. So you have your own chat GBT, if I may call it. And instead of like uploading sensitive information to chat GBT or to any external AI tool and asking, hey, what is this document saying? Instead, you can just say, hey, internal AI, do me this, and it will actually do it for you while giving you a report. So basically something integrated.
And that's so much more safe. One of the most ludicrous things that I've ever, like, an AI firm once approached me in my business and said, oh, we can find a way to completely AI all the accounting, and then you could hire less accountants and they'll do more work and they could take on more clients. I was extremely skeptical, but I wanted to hear them out, right? I heard them out, and they said, all we will need is all your clients' data given to. And I was so close. Well, first of all, the request was pretty egregious. I wanted to just hang up the call and email them a bunch of curse words, I guess. But just then, that I not only slammed the door shut, I locked it, and then if I could set up a grenade in front of it, I would. I would not.
Too much Call of Duty.
Yeah. No, as in like, and I think that what you're suggesting as an approach is so much more digestible, saying everything's going to stay in house. None of this information is going to get put up to a cloud or be trained for other businesses or other enterprises. Do you think that this is the future of AI? That instead of using kind of these large language models provided by major corporations, people are just going to create their own internal AI kind of agents or their own models that they use internally for their own workflows? Is that where you perceive AI to go?
Yes, but only when it adds significant value. So for example, if you are a new business owner and let's say that you want to hire 2-3 people to basically do a specific task, I wouldn't advise you to basically leverage AI unless it makes a lot of sense. So, and I'll be honest with you, an internal AI setup that is secure and reliable, I'll be honest, it is pretty expensive. It wouldn't be like a minimal investment. So it really has to make a lot of sense. To answer your question, yes, definitely this is the future of AI. There is a lot of, I would say, beauty in keeping things in-house and having the automation built bespoke to your business, not something generalized for like all types of businesses.
And but by expensive, do you mean that these enterprise clients have to create their own data centers to store this data and the graphics cards and all these other items to then process this data? Is that the major cost increase?
That's one of the major costs. There are other major costs where basically, in order to do that, you cannot just hire a web developer. You need to basically have infrastructure engineers which are specialized in setting up AI. AI is very resources hungry. Like you cannot use CPUs, you have to use GPUs. You remember the days when, like, I think Claude or Moltbot was released, and people were having like Mac Minis and all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So the price Mac Minis essentially became sold out because the AI prompters found that to be the most cost-effective combination of hardware to then process the models.
That's right. When you talk about enterprise, you cannot just have a bunch of Mac Minis. You need to have, I would say, servers which are set up correctly. Now there are two ways to do this. Either if you already have a private cloud, like for example Microsoft Azure or something like that, then the hosting of it will be on your private cloud. So still disconnected from the internet, but it will be on your private cloud. And these cloud providers tend to provide easy scalability. Like, hey, you want extra resources, pay this much, you will get basically extra. But maybe some government entities, some banks, they sometimes have like servers on premise. So in this case, it's built internally. So it depends on your infrastructure.
And you're still leveraging or encouraging your enterprise clients to find a cost-effective way to implement this and then add this to their workflow. Are there safeguards in place in case let's just say that like your data center isn't working or the hardware isn't working? What are the fail-safes that people have? Because AI is still dependent on real-world hardware that's going to be used. Do you then have a backend that can then do the thing manually on top of the AI if it stops working?
Definitely. That's not something, of course, that I directly work in, but basically what you have is you need to have DevOps engineers that basically have that engineered properly so that there is a fallback mechanism as you have described.
And given the fact that there are, I guess the major player in AI is currently the US, they're leading them with their best models, with a high investment. But then you have open source models coming out of China as well. And some people are leaning more on the open source models. Where do you recommend that enterprise clients go? Do they base it off the models on the West or the East? Where would a large enterprise client go for their own internal models?
Makes sense. Now, when it comes to information, you have, of course, sensitive information, you have public information, right? So when it comes to public information, proprietary AI providers, such as Anthropic, OpenAI, of course, they have insane capabilities, right? And it wouldn't make sense for most organizations to not leverage those, especially when it comes to non-sensitive data. When it comes to sensitive data, I would highly recommend using, I would say, open source LLMs, because open source LLMs, that means you host all that humongous chunk of data, or basically the LLM internally, and then basically nothing will be leaked out. No medical records, no KYC information, no financial data is getting basically leaked out. So yeah, both have to be used.
You also briefly touched that these are sensitive topics in conversations dealing with smaller businesses versus enterprise clients. What is the difference between dealing with an enterprise client and a medium-sized business? How do you, not necessarily, I'm sure the pricing must be a world of difference, things of that nature, but what is the core difference? Is it the time to act on work or approvals, etc.? What do you find are the challenges with dealing with large enterprise clients?
I would say the challenges are, so when we talk about large enterprises, you're talking about businesses that were established like decades ago. So they cannot easily go ahead and change all of their infrastructure to be like as fast paced as like the new startups. So you have to cope up with the existing systems. If, for example, they say that we want you to work on this specific system, or we want the code to be on premise, then of course you have to respect that, you have to work on that. And that sometimes leads to, of course, extra costs and like a larger scope for the project. Now, when it comes to startup businesses, what you want to help them with is basically help them to grow. If, for example, you provide them a solution which is, all right, it's scalable, it's amazing in the long run, but it will really hinder their growth, that wouldn't really make sense, and they wouldn't really sign up for your services. But if you basically take it in phases, you say to them, for example, that maybe do this. So I have a formula in mind, which is basically how much value and how much investment. Okay, when I talk about investment, I talk about both time and money. So with little time and money investment, how much value can I provide you, right? So that's how I look at it. So, for example, it might not make a lot of sense for startups to use internal AI platform that is custom made. Maybe it would make sense for them to use, I would say, external AI tools with caution, of course, until, of course, they require that level of scalability. So, project scope, like hugely varies between startups, medium, and startup businesses.
And what did you want a split of these businesses? Do you want like, okay, I want half of my business to be startups and the other half being enterprise? What was when you were going through starting your business and doing research, what did you decide was the key demographic that you wanted as your clients?
I would say continuing with what I know, and what I know is enterprise businesses. So of course I worked for like almost a decade in the payments industry, and of course the majority of the clients are medium to enterprise businesses, and I know what enterprises look for, and I know what medium businesses look for, what startups look for. So because of the fact that majority of my experience was with enterprise businesses, I basically chose to target that demographic.
So running a business is pretty, it's mentally exhausting. It can be physically exhausting. How do you know when to push forward and pull back? Do you have a balance in terms of your work schedule? Do you feel like you're working as much as you would for corporate, more or less? What does your life look like now post, corporate into being an entrepreneur? What do you feel like are the key differences?
Sometimes there isn't much of a difference because, of course, clients always come first. So for example, if I woke up, let's say, or if I want to wake up the next day at 11 a.m., I don't really have much of a choice if I have a meeting scheduled at 9. So I would say clients come first, but of course, I always tend to balance. I highly respect, or I highly maintain, I would say, work-life balance. Sometimes, like, even if I can take more, I can, or probably like, I can fit more in the day, but for example, I feel that that will take a toll on my mental health. I would avoid doing so. So, for example, I can't avoid working out.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's a key hobby. You've never stopped. Because I think that from all the people I've seen, we've had dips of phases of being extremely good shape to being kind of out of shape. But you've always been very steady. Like you've always been very routine with that. And do you think that that's something that's a non-negotiable for you at all times?
It is, yes. If I stop working out for exactly 3 days, I feel terrible. Like I really need to do an activity. And sometimes, like, of course, when you go too crazy in the gym, you develop an injury. And of course, that will keep you at home for a prolonged amount of time. And yeah, that's not fun.
Yeah, what are you training for though? So I look at your Instagram and it's a lot of like boxing, jumping. I saw you on a plane once. I was like, what is this? Like, what is happening with this guy at the same time you're running your business? But I guess that's just how you de-stress. Like what people may perceive as hard work is actually you relaxing.
Yeah. I would say I used to take weightlifting way too seriously, like working out at least 5 times a day. I remember there was a phase where I was working out like 5 times a week, not a day. Yeah, so there was a phase where I was working out like 6 times a week, and that was insane. I was like, I really need to get in shape and so on. But now I'm in more of a relaxed phase where like there's more to fitness than just weight training. Weight training started to become boring. So I started to incorporate like a bit of boxing, a bit of swimming, a bit of cycling. And yeah, like I always like to have fun while also being in shape.
What I never see people really talking about is how notoriously easy it is to get out of shape in Dubai.
Definitely.
No one talks about this at all. Like I've seen people just come in, fresh expats, and join their corporate jobs. They're pretty happy, immediately blow up. Like they gain a ton of weight, they get really unhealthy, and it's just because of the demands of the job and the work life here. I think is a bit more fast paced. probably similar to every major city, but people work here pretty crazy hours and pretty at a high level of like, I would say effort. Whether that effort is useful or not is up to debate and who it is, but that seems to kind of manifest itself in becoming very unhealthy. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that people just kind of let themselves go as soon as they come here?
Food is super delicious here. Okay, that's the number one reason. I would say I travel to a few countries, and the thing is, the more I travel, the more I love Dubai. It's very weird. It's like you appreciate what other countries don't have. Where exactly in the world can you order groceries and receive them in 5 minutes? Like that's very rare, you know? And like the food options, the service is impeccable here. Look, in a lot of countries as well, you take a night drive at 10 p.m. What things are open, right? There are barely things open. Like I'm sure if you travel to London, for example, you go out at 10 p.m., probably there aren't so many options. In Dubai, it's so lively. It's so alive at that time. So you
Yeah,
want rest.
it's a night owl city,
Yeah,
if not night owl
never
country.
sleeps.
And I remember I was in Australia recently. I was in Melbourne and I was trying to get a coffee. It was 5 p.m. and I went to the counter and they're like, "Oh, we're closing." I'm like, "5 p.m. Come on, we're just getting started." And they're like, "You need to go home, sir." Like you just, like it's crazy. And I think that that's also a big problem, weirdly enough, is that if you can get anything you want at any time of day, it does encourage you to stay up later, work later, do things later. But I think the hardest thing is probably going to sleep on time and actually making sure that your life is balanced. I think that UAE has kind of this ability to bring out your best and worst habits at times. It's a person multiplier. If you could do more of something, it's really up to the person of what more you do. Which also explains why there's so many people with rapidly growing businesses and also, rapidly deteriorating in some ways. Do you think that you just need to have a system in place to keep yourself balanced in UAE? Like, do you go through certain reminders of yourself to remind yourself to do certain things? How do you work productivity when you're just completely in a country that will
In a
let you
paradise.
do whatever you want, basically let you fly as high as you want? How do you keep yourself grounded in that kind of environment?
That's a great question. And I follow a very simple rule. And I think it's quite easy to follow, which is when people are busy, you should be busy. And when people are free, you should also be kind of available. So, for example, when we talk about like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., most people are working. And it wouldn't make so much sense to like go out and try to have fun. All your friends are busy. Everyone is busy. You know, of course, when we talk about like business owners. And I would say like I follow that rule. So at 6 p.m., no matter what, I have to have some time for myself. And of course, when it comes to staying disciplined, like you need to have some sort of like personal reminders, like remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. What exactly is the value? And also sometimes breaking things into chunks, into like consumable chunks, that will also help you to move. If you say, oh, I need to establish a business, you'll probably never get started. But imagine if you tell yourself, I need to research about my business. That sounds more realistic. So that can also help you to get going.
Well, you've started the business fairly recently, and I get this question every now and again. People ask me, if you could do something differently from the start, what would you do? I know that you've recently started, but is there anything that you saw as like, maybe I could have done this better or this in another way? Would you do anything differently from when you started?
Yes, definitely. I would say network more, do more research. Because I already have the experience to tell myself, Layth, do not assume anything. It doesn't mean that if you see that something makes sense or something adds a lot of value, maybe that's subjective. That's only to you. So you need to make sure that this is something that applies to the rest of the people as well. So I would say doing more research, networking more right from the start could have helped me to understand Layth AI is the next big thing. Nobody cares about web development or like, basic mobile apps. They want scalable, AI ready kind of like platforms. So that's something that I took a bit of time to basically realize.
All right, perfect. Well, that's it for me. Thank you for coming on, Layth. I hope that people learn more about starting a tech business in the UAE, and hopefully we'll hang out soon.
Sounds good.
All right.
Definitely.